Hello, I'm Matt Reardon, and thanks for watching this Wednesday evening, May 31st, West Weather Update brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. To start here, we are looking at really a summary of May in the upper levels of the atmosphere across North America. And I think this tells the story really of the month of May. We had this large ridge building into Canada. This prompted wildfires. We talked about smoke earlier in the month billowing out of Canada into the United States. And then beneath that, or south of that, we had this strong, anomalous subtropical jet. So there's really two jet streams at play here when we're working with the atmosphere, particularly in summer. One of them extending up and around this ridge into Canada, but then we had this split flow with the subtropical jet pushing into the southern portion of the United States. This helped to bring moisture, upper level flow into parts of the Intermountain West. We had daily thunderstorm and shower chances across Nevada, parts of Idaho, Utah, northern Arizona, day after day. And really, we're still dealing with those here today, and I think out into that extended forecast as well. This had another effect. It helped to bring about low pressures off the California coastline. This brought onshore flow into parts of Southern California. We had a great month of May. If you were interested in May gray, or that deep marine layer that helped to keep temperatures cooler across Southern California and really much of the south central, even up into the central coast of California. And then the upper level ridging in Canada, overlapping enough with the Pacific Northwest, parts of Idaho and Montana, to keep this area quite warm. And for areas that didn't receive those afternoon showers and storms in May, it was more of a warm and dry month for folks in the Pacific Northwest under the influence of that ridge. If we jump over and look at just the precipitation summaries over the last 30 days relative to average, there's that dry signal that we received in May across the Pacific Northwest, the Willamette Valley, the Cascades, up through the SeaTac metro area. Extending east of that, across the elevation into the Intermountain West, we had the influence of those daily shower and storm chances. We had, like I said, that subtropical component of the jet stream pushing up into the southern United States. That helped to influence thunderstorms in these regions here. As for California, Southern California, that persistent onshore flow helped to keep around this kind of daily morning shower chances, or even just kind of that mist that comes on shore in the morning associated with that deep marine layer and those cooler temperatures that we talked about. If we jump over and look at temperatures, we kind of had this consistent story where we were looking at warmer than average temperatures in the northern part of the West region, parts of Washington, Idaho, Oregon, Montana. And then as you inch your way southward into California, parts of Nevada, Arizona, underneath the influence of first that onshore flow in Southern California, we had temperature deficits here through the south central coastal region, and then even east into parts of Arizona and Nevada, where temperatures were more seasonable, or cooler at least, than some of the heat waves we dealt with further to the north. If we fast forward now, what does the current temperatures, weather look like across the western United States? So I thought I'd just start with the visible satellite imagery going on here in this afternoon, just afternoon, here across the western region. I'll start right up here at the top northwest part of this graph. You can make out really some onshore flow just in the low-level clouds here in parts of Oregon and Washington, pushing out of the northwest. That's this cooler air that has come in behind this weak system that we talked about all the way last week, pushing into the area, helping to relieve what was a quite warmer than average trend across parts of Washington and Oregon earlier at the end of last week. If we look over into the interior, we talked about kind of this persistent daily shower and thunderstorm chance in parts of eastern Oregon, southern Idaho, Nevada. I think we still kind of see that pattern here. We have lingering showers here in the Treasure Valley in eastern Oregon, far western Idaho here, precipitation falling here. If we go further south than that in some of the elevations here, Basin and Range in Nevada seeing daily shower and thunderstorm chances, and that even extending all the way into parts of Utah. Other than that, eastern Washington, Pacific Northwest, other than some fog here and low-level clouds, not much precipitation to talk about. That dry May continuing, and then the Central Valley of California, not a cloud in the sky, that dry weather persisting there as well. If I take this further south to the southern region of the western U.S. here, what I like about this picture here is you can kind of see this arc of thunderstorms pushing up into the Four Corners area here. You'll notice this kind of swirl in the atmosphere. That's that subtropical jet stream influence. So these are winds in the upper levels of the atmosphere. They're pushing in out of the southwest, and you can even see them kind of spinning up and helping to influence those daily shower and thunderstorm activities into the elevations of the Intermountain West, and yet leaving southern Arizona, leaving much of the lower Colorado River Valley and the arable regions, down here, I should say arable river, it's certainly an arable river as well, devoid of precipitation. And that trend has been consistent despite some activity we saw in maybe the Gila River Basin, parts of the upper Colorado River Basin. We haven't seen the precip make its way all the way into maybe a typical monsoon fashion where a rogue thunderstorm can make its way into, say, the Imperial County of California or Yuma, Arizona. And then over to the west, along the coast of Southern California, there is that May gray, that onshore flow, those pesky low-level clouds, fog, and showers sticking around, at least today in parts of Southern California. If we look out into the forecast, I'll start with a temperature conversation. I think it's a little bit more relevant as we get into summer, right, in the western U.S., precipitation becomes less of a talking point. Just climatologically, as we get into these summer months, we see less precipitation outside of the monsoon, and the conversation a little more kind of dependent upon temperatures going forward. This is valid as a Wednesday. We talked about that cooling trend that had come through parts of the Pacific Northwest. We're seeing the influence of that here. The colors here are relative to average, so not the absolute, what that actual air temperature is outside, but relative to what we typically would expect this time of year. Really the Pacific Northwest all the way through the Central Valley of California, the May gray influence all the way through Southern California, where we actually see the biggest temperature deficits on the graphic here, and then even east into the lower Colorado River Valley. Cooler than average in terms of temperatures. To get warmer than average, you have to go all the way up into eastern Idaho, perhaps parts of northeast Nevada or northern Utah. If I play this forward, Thursday, temperatures moderating a little bit more seasonal across parts of Oregon, Washington. We still see that cooler temperature influence in southern and central California. But as we get into Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, a warming temperature trend across a number of regions across the West. The Central Valley of California making its way back into the middle and upper 90s as we go into this weekend. Willamette Valley in Oregon, up through parts of Washington, certainly eastern Washington, pushing those temperatures back up after this recent cool trend, getting back up into that what was been a very consistent pattern of warmer temperatures in the northern half of the western region. Take it out into Monday, into early next week, all the way out into Tuesday, June 6th. We see temperatures peaking here on Tuesday and Wednesday of next week for the Pacific Northwest. Now, there has been some variability in this forecast. Some of the forecasts have come in, have suggested maybe a more significant newsworthy heat wave, perhaps temperatures touching triple digits in some of the metro areas. Some of the recent model runs suggest maybe not to that extreme. Regardless of what that exact temperature is, I think it's pretty likely that we exceed 90 degrees Fahrenheit in cities like Portland, further north, and then even further south into the Willamette Valley. Whether or not we extend further than that, I just think isn't quite clear as of yet. But the consistent signal of warmer temperatures early next week is certainly there, and that's something we'll be watching. As far as the southern portion of the west region next week, cooler temperatures building back in after that brief warm-up that we saw in the Central Valley this weekend. Temperatures come back down early next week, and we'll talk about why that is in the next slide here. If we look at precipitation, like I said, temperature more of the story, I think, going forward, at least in that 7-day forecast. The reason I didn't start with precip is we still kind of have that persistent afternoon shower signal in the Intermountain West, and not a ton to talk about otherwise. So this is valid as of Wednesday evening. When I'm recording this video here, you can see, again, that kind of lingering afternoon shower and storm activity and the elevations of the Intermountain West. Some of that, again, could sneak into the Snake River Valley. We just talked about the showers impacting the Treasure Valley in eastern Oregon. Western Nevada, I think, has been something of a bullseye. Certainly the leeward slopes of the Sierra Nevada, that will be continuing. If I take this into Thursday, similar shower and thunderstorm activity, maybe weakening a bit as we go into the weekend and extending further to the east over parts of northern Idaho, Montana, eastern Utah. This is valid as a Friday afternoon. Take this to Saturday afternoon, not as much activity in the Intermountain West. Into Sunday, out into Monday, some of that now returning to parts of Nevada, returning to the leeward slopes of the Sierra Nevada. Tuesday into Wednesday, we start to see, curiously, something of an upper level trough start to push into California. Now, it's not going to be a big rainmaker in terms of the Central Valley or the western coastline, but I think it could influence some shower and thunderstorm activities, actually sneaking in to parts of the northern Sierra Nevadas and maybe even making their way into the North Valley of California, north of Sacramento. Can't rule out shower and thunderstorm afternoon chances there, but mostly impacting elevations, even perhaps into some of the coastal mountain ranges or the Klamath Mountains here by the middle of next week. Temperatures probably lingering on the lower or cooler side as a result of that, with more cloud cover, at least in parts of the Central Valley or the northern half of it. Take a look at the 7-day temperature anomalies that's just averaged over the next 7 days. We still see that consistent trend, right? Warmer to the north under the influence of that ridging in Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana. As you extend further to the south, underneath that afternoon shower and thunderstorm activity, still kind of underneath the influence of that subtropical jet stream we talked about in Nevada, Utah, Arizona, keeping those temperatures cooler, and then still seeing that lingering onshore flow in parts of Southern California, keeping that consistent trend of cooler weather starting out into the first week of June here, extending that May gray beyond where maybe it would typically go in a given year. Central Valley, more of a mixed bag. We talked about that warm up this weekend, coming back down to earth by early next week, kind of end up washing out that temperature in the 7-day average totals. This is just looking at precipitation totals. We're not looking at relative to average. I just wanted to show you the absolute forecast here from the ECMWF, valid as a 7-day total running all the way out to next week into Wednesday, June 7th. You can see the central Sierra Nevadas, seeing those leeward slope showers and thunderstorms potential there. That part's jumping off the map here. Intermountain West shower and thunderstorm activities, mostly isolated to areas of elevation, but still seeing some shower and thunderstorm activity getting into parts of western Nevada. We talked about that being a bullseye. Perhaps some activity getting into the North Valley of California with some coastal precipitation chances lingering there as well. And then kind of that, what's almost been like this daily chance of shower or mist activity in Southern California continuing, but not significant widespread precip like we saw earlier this spring, anything like that. As you go further to the north, eastern Washington, parts of northern Oregon, not expecting much in terms of significant precip, and even into the Snake River Valley, there's some high precipitation amounts nearby or in proximity, but if you look closely at the valley itself, not significant widespread precipitation expected. Most of that shower and thunderstorm activity tends to stay confined to the elevations, which is why we see central and northern Idaho kind of jumping off the map here. But again, you can't rule out some of these showers and thunderstorms lingering into some arable regions, like we're seeing today and Wednesday afternoon in the Treasure Valley in eastern Oregon and western Idaho. To kind of get a picture of what's going on here, big picture in the atmosphere, I'll make this jet stream forecast valid as a Wednesday afternoon where we're at here, recording this video. Two things of note here. There's that big anomalous subtropical jet stream that we just talked about, and there's that kind of spinning up into parts of Arizona, New Mexico. We talked about that arc of thunderstorms here Wednesday afternoon, visible just on the satellite imagery here, influencing that shower and thunderstorm activity in the Intermountain West. We also see this kind of weak troughing pushing into the Pacific Northwest. That's keeping the temperatures cooler here. We saw all the way back in that visible satellite loop, those onshore flow, those clouds lingering into the Willamette Valley and Pacific Northwest, keeping temperatures cooler there. As I play this through Thursday into Friday, we've quickly replaced that troughing here over parts of Oregon and Washington with this upper level ridge. We still have the subtropical jet stream, but it's been shunted even further to the south, now focused more on Mexico. That has helped to relieve this area of kind of that daily shower and thunderstorm activity extending off to the east now without the influence of that subtropical jet that was building into the area. And this is helping to influence that warming trend. So this ridge in the jet stream bringing temperatures up here in parts of Oregon, Washington, all the way through California, perhaps even bringing a warming trend, albeit not significantly so, to portions of Southern California and Arizona. I'll play this out through the weekend into next week. One thing we'll notice, this is valid as of Tuesday evening, June 6th here. Big upper level ridge again developing back into Canada. We looked at that May kind of summary, that pattern at the beginning of this video, and we saw that kind of similar pattern. So we're seeing something of a repeat that as we get into that first week of June here. That is going to keep temperatures up in these states in the western U.S. in proximity to that ridge. So states I'm talking about, Oregon, Washington, northern Idaho, parts of Montana, expecting warmer temperatures just in proximity of this anomalous ridging here in the jet stream over parts of Canada. Further to the south, we do see that subtropical jet stream component here coming into the onshore areas of the southern United States, parts of Mexico, and it still is kind of weakly spinning back up into this Four Corners area. I would expect that by mid next week. Now we're returning to those Intermountain West. I sound like a broken record, more shower and thunderstorm activity into parts of Nevada, Utah, perhaps the Snake River Valley, perhaps parts of eastern Oregon. And you'll notice this kind of spin here over what I'll call the central Sierra Nevada region of California. It's really an upper level trough trying to develop into this area here. I think that's going to help push those shower and thunderstorm activities potentially west of the Sierra Nevadas and help get them into northern California, where they could sneak into the valley, sneak into parts of the coastal region of California, or certainly the coastal and Klamath mountain ranges. As this upper level trough settles into the area, more cloud cover, I think, lingering over the Central Valley, keeping those temperatures suppressed. Maybe not too cool, but certainly not going to get any big heat wave out of a pattern like this. And just to kind of get into that long-range forecast discussion, I'll take this through the end of next week. This is something that's been consistent on two different models here. This is the ECMWF, the European model. But if I were to jump over and show you the global forecast from the US domestic model, similar picture painted here, you'll notice this polar extension in the jet stream coming out of the Pacific, or the northern Pacific, I should say, pushing into the area, and it's splitting just off the coast of the western US. And by that, I mean it splits into this northern component. There's that ridge over Canada, splits into that subtropical component that we've been talking about. And as this split inches closer and closer, this kind of break point in the jet stream, that's only going to work to amplify this split pattern we've seen across the West in May out into June. So that's only going to entrench that warm north, cooler south line somewhere, I think, over northern California, where we build heat into areas in the northern part of the West region. We build cooler weather here, continuing that colder trend in Southern California, parts of Arizona, and we continue that Intermountain West shower and thunderstorm activity and an anomalous precipitation chance expected in the wetter direction for states like western or Nevada, Utah, northern Arizona, southern Idaho, potentially parts of eastern Oregon that have that influence of that upper level troughing there. If we look at the Climate Prediction Center, get a opinion here from another source. If we look at the 8 to 14 day temperature outlook, so this is looking at really out into that second week in June, June 7th through the 13th. I think that paints the picture pretty well there from the Climate Prediction Center. Their warmest probabilities of above average temperatures expected in parts of Washington, northern Oregon, parts of Idaho, even extending down into northern California, under the influence of that split, that upper level ridging, trying to build into parts of Alberta and British Columbia. Extending to the south from there, I mentioned there's going to be this kind of more defined split in that warm south, or warm north, cold south, temperature pattern. Now as we get into Southern California, parts of Arizona, southern Nevada, colder temperatures expected. And by colder in June, we're really just talking about cooler than average, still going to be quite warm in an absolute sense. But then the map on the right, that's the precipitation probabilities. Above average chances in parts of far eastern California, parts of Nevada, Utah, and then can't rule out some afternoon shower and thunderstorm activities in the North Valley of California, maybe even all the way through the Central Valley, underneath that upper level troughing, which will linger cloud cover, instability in the atmosphere, could get some precipitation lingering into parts of the Central Valley, which is typically when we're drying out this time in June, starting to talk about some serious high temperatures. Not the case here, at least through the first half of June, this looking all the way out to June 13th in California. So good news in the sense that not expecting a big heat wave for parts of central part of California. When we're talking about Southern California, this is an area that's been cold really to start spring of 2023, certainly, and wet. And now we're running GDD deficits through many coastal regions, even some parts perhaps of the Central Valley. So while it's good that we're not seeing this significant heat that's helping to delay or slow down that snow melt in the Sierra Nevada, it's kind of kept things somewhat in control in terms of the reservoirs, which are quite full at the moment. But we are looking at some kind of competing factors in terms of the effects on agriculture in aggregate. If we take a look just for fun at the week 3 to 4 outlook, this is looking all the way out through mid-June. I'm showing this because just not seeing a huge change in the forecast. We still see this colder south, warmer north, perhaps extended a bit further to the north, and then that Intermountain West precipitation chance over, again, the same states that we've been talking about. If we look at the ECMWF monthly forecast from June 5th all the way out to July 5th, we see a similar consistent signal here. Colder south through Nevada, parts of California, certainly Southern California included in that. And then to get to the warmer temperatures all the way up into Oregon, parts of Washington, Idaho, and Montana. Precipitation over that same time frame. There's that bullseye over the Intermountain West, perhaps focusing more on the Snake River Valley, Treasure Valley, perhaps some precip getting into eastern Washington. But I mentioned the models here kind of going back and forth onto the extent of that. Either way, continuing the drier trend in the Pacific Northwest, coupled with warmer temperatures. So that's something to keep an eye on there. But not significant precip coming into parts of Arizona or New Mexico, not seeing a big early start to the monsoon season. And we've talked about why that might be the case with that strong subtropical jet stream kind of disrupting that typical monsoon circulation. If we take a look at the sea surface temperature picture, I think this helps to lend some information to that forecast here. We're still seeing these cold waters off the west coast of the United States. This is helping to bring more troughs into that southern portion of the west region. And then this warm water that has just recently pushed into parts of the Northeast Pacific has helped to bring ridging into parts of Canada. We just talked about that ridging developing in British Columbia, Alberta, and then Washington, parts of Idaho, parts of Oregon, feeling the warmer temperature effects of that. So I think that's just helping to entrench this pattern of warmer to the north, colder to the south, helping to reinforce the strength and development of that subtropical jet stream, which is helping to influence that precipitation chances we see in the Intermountain West. All these things kind of working together to keep this forecast pattern lingering, what it was in May, out into June. Now, when this pattern might get disrupted, might start to get more interesting, where we're talking about something different than warm north, cool to the south, it's not clear right now. I think we'd have to see potentially a change in these sea surface temperature patterns near the end of June. Now, that's possible. These sea surface temperatures do change. They just do it quite slowly. I just mentioned we had this recent change over the last 30 days or so where we brought warmer temperatures into the Northeast Pacific, and then that warmer weather responding in parts of the Pacific Northwest. So that's kind of the time frame we think about when we're talking about warming up or cooling off ocean temperatures. 15 to 30 days, sometimes can take even longer than that. But at least right now, while we see these colder waters here, warmer waters here to the north, that temperature regime going to continue, I think, at least for the next 15 days, and we'll have to see how things shake out at the end of June. One other thing worth mentioning here, El Nino, quickly developing here in parts of the eastern Pacific, really just off the coast of South America is where we see these warmer ocean temperatures. These will have to continue to extend and warm up into the central Pacific until we've kind of officially entered El Nino status. That's expected right now as we go through summer. Whether we're looking at a very strong El Nino or something of a more moderate or average El Nino episode, not clear right now. Most of the forecast models shifting toward what could be quite a strong El Nino, but not a home run forecast, at least right now. We'll be keeping an eye on that as we go through the summer. Big picture there, El Nino very likely at some point in 2023. One thing I wanted to cover, I mentioned the May gray, the colder temperatures in California. We certainly discussed ad nauseum earlier this year of the atmospheric river sequence that kept temperatures down, but just kind of picking on Santa Maria, California here. This is looking at growing degree days from the start of the year all the way through 2023 here, and we are well below any of the recent years on this graphic here. This black line is where we're at in 2023, our current year. The kind of 20-year average range is plotted here in yellow, and then these most recent years, 2022, 21, 2019, all of them, I'd say well above where we were in terms of GDDs at this time for those given years, just showing you how cold we've been this year. And if you want to look at a different plot just to kind of paint the same story, it's looking at year-to-date temperatures. Again, I'm picking on Santa Maria, California. I could go to Oxnard, parts in Southern California along the coast, or even into the central coastline. You'd see a similar picture painted here, where a lot more blue shading on this map signifying colder than average temperatures to start 2023 than these kind of brief red periods where we had warmer than average temperatures. The bias has certainly been to the colder side. And while the good news is we got a lot of precipitation for parts of the Sierra Nevadas, we've improved the reservoir situation in the upper elevations in California, while east of the coastline, temperatures still lingering on the colder side, and that's starting to build up in terms of some of these growing degree day deficits here as we get into May and June. Again, the good news is not forecasting any significant heat wave through June. In fact, if we look at some of the seasonal forecasts, we kind of talked about that June forecast, but if we extend this conversation all the way out into June, July, and August here, there's a lot of red on this map. This is the IRI multi-model forecast for North America for the summer in terms of temperatures. A lot of warmer than average signal on this map, but if you kind of zoom in and look closely at parts of California, the Central Valley, and even coastal California, expected to be at the very least seasonal, if not on the cooler side versus normal. So I think that's good news for folks in California trying to avoid heat waves, trying to avoid high evapotranspiration. I think good news when we just think about how much water we got, that we're not going to be burning through it all right away in summer here, and that's also helping to kind of draw out that melt season and prevent more catastrophic flooding as a result of all that snow melt. Other things of note, though, if we do have a weaker monsoon season, we'll have less clouds and precipitation in parts of Arizona, parts of New Mexico, parts of Utah. Again, El Niños, as they develop, we get a strengthened subtropical jet. We were just talking about that. Tends to disrupt that monsoonal circulation, can weaken the typical monsoon in late summer. That would potentially allow more heat to build into areas like the desert Southwest. And then as those temperatures warm up in the Northeast Pacific, increasing the risk for heat waves in Washington, Oregon, and Idaho are at the very least warmer than average temperatures. Kind of like we're seeing as we get down to the forecast mid to next week, whether we're dealing with significant triple-digit temperatures, not quite clear. You kind of have to watch these things closely to figure out what that maximum temperature is going to be. But I think that risk is just going to be lingering around this summer as a result of those temperatures warming up in the Northeast Pacific. That kind of sums up the thoughts here for this summer as we get into June, July, and August. I'll have another update for you all next week. Thank you for watching.